Temple Grandin.
Hi, it's great to be here by Zoom today. Really wonderful. I think I'll start out and just tell a little bit about myself, do a fairly short presentation, and then open it up for questions. When I was 3, I had no speech at all the symptoms of autism. I'm now in my 70s. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of early intervention. I got it, really good early education. Now, and I'm autistic. Now, the problem we've got with autism is it's such a big spectrum. It goes all the way from somebody like Elon Musk to somebody that may have much more severe disabilities than some of the people here today. So very, very big spectrum. And I just heard the beginning announcement that about getting friends. When I was in high school, I had a horrible time in high school. I was bullied. I was called all kinds of horrible names like tape recorder and bones because I was skinny, and workhorse because I took care of the horse barn. And where I had friends was through shared interests, electronics club, model rocket club. I just recently just had a phone call with a lady that, sitting at home, doing way too much sitting at home, writing me really almost robotic text messages that she was upset and anxious and things like that. And then she started getting out in church group, an art group. And then when I talked to her on the phone, she was like a different person. So it's just super important to get out and do things, even if it's just to go out to Walmart or something, just to get out. And people often ask me, well, how did I get my interest in the cattle industry? Been in the cattle industry many years, designing facilities. And if you're interested in my work on designing cattle facilities and my life, you can get my book on Thinking in Pictures. But I got exposed to the cattle industry. You got to get exposed to something in order to get interested in it. Now, when I was out working in heavy construction, I designed the front end of every Cargill plant in North America. So how did I manage to get those kind of jobs? Because when you're really weird, they don't look very good on interviews. But what I found worked was to just show people copies of my work. And there's one of my drawings that's in my book, Thinking in Pictures. And I simply showed people my work. And there's a number of people that might be gifted in computer programming. They might be really gifted in photography. I've seen some beautiful photography done by people on the autism spectrum. And since I'm an associative thinker, I'm now seeing a guy that's in a wheelchair. He doesn't have autism, but he was an absolute beautiful photographer of flowers. Now that's a skill that other people are going to want. So I said, you could just go into the big convention center that's wheelchair accessible and take pictures of flowers at the flower show, and people pay you good money for that. The other thing I learned, let's talk about advocacy some. I think one of the things that will be helpful is to be more specific. As a visual thinker, I'm very specific. I mean, maybe before I get into advocacy, I'll talk about the different kinds of minds. I'm what's called an object visualizer. Everything I think about is a picture. Nothing's abstract. Everything is specific pictures. So when I got to talking about the person in the wheelchair, I now see him. We went out to dinner. He showed me beautiful pictures of flowers. You see, that is something specific. It's not generalized. So a visual thinker who thinks in pictures, the kinds of professions they can be good at is art, photography, working with animals, and fixing engines and motors. In fact, some of the individuals that spend too much time on video games, there's some adults who have found that working on cars was a lot more interesting. Then you have the mathematical kind of thinker. This would be computer programmer, people that work out in Silicon Valley, those kind of people. And then you have verbal thinkers. And a lot of people in a lot of jobs, they are verbal thinkers. They think in words. So there's a tendency to overgeneralize, about advocacy or something like that, or accommodations or some other thing. Where a visual thinker thinks specific. It's what's called bottom-up thinking. Concepts are formed with specific examples. It's just that simple. Concepts are formed with specific examples. So let's look at some specific examples I had when I was in college. I'm really terrible at math. And when I got a bad grade on my first math quiz, I went to the professor and I asked for help. The big mistake that people often make is they do not ask for help soon enough. Okay, now I just was listening in on the conversation about getting housing. Yes, that's a very specific, really super important accommodation. Absolutely, absolutely. And then, some other accommodation might be more specific, like getting tutoring in math. They'll say, well, advocate for yourself. But when I've seen students with autism go to college, the biggest mistake they make is when they get in trouble, they don't ask for help. Like they have a problem with the class, they need to ask for help right away. If they're living in a dorm where it's too noisy, then they need to do something about it right away. But that's something specific. Asking for help quickly enough, really, really important. Another thing that can be a problem in the environment for some people that have epilepsy, also some people on the autism spectrum or dyslexia, ADHD, is seeing flicker on LED lights. And this can really drive you crazy. Some of this is due to the wrong dimmer switch on the lights. I think some of the cheaper LEDs flicker even when they don't have a dimmer switch. Now that's something specific to get rid of lighting that flickers. Now out in a job place, there are some jobs I would definitely have to avoid. Multitasking on the McDonald's takeout window. That'd be way too much busy multitasking. But I was just talking to somebody just the other day where their son is assembling the pizza boxes and doing very well at that. Where some of the other jobs he didn't work out, but assembling the pizza boxes, he's doing just fine at that. So multitasking might be something to avoid. Another thing that can be a problem is the boss go and just give you a whole string of verbal instructions. I cannot remember that. I'm not able to remember a long string of verbal instructions. So what I need is like a pilot's checklist. Okay, let's say the job was to take apart the McDonald's ice cream machine and clean it. So I need a checklist. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, the steps for cleaning, for taking the machine apart. Then step 1, step 2, step 3, the steps for cleaning it, and then the steps for putting it back together. Now, after I've done that job for a long time, then I would just have a visual picture of how to do it. And then I would be just fine. The other thing is you need to be insistent when you advocate. But you can be insistent, but still be nice. It's sort of like you're not going to go away. But anger doesn't usually help. But being insistent. And the other thing is we need to be looking a lot more for just opportunities within the community. Okay, and talking to the lady that was just sitting at home all day, I said, you just need to go to your church group. Just get out, do something. That doesn't cost anything. It's free. And she had a way of getting there. Now, one of the big problems for a lot of individuals is transportation. That's a huge problem. I have seen some very good programs where they had people out working in jobs, but they couldn't drive. And they were about going broke on Uber rides. That is a really big problem. I think now what I'd like to do is I'd like to get some questions, and I can only see a big room because what I'll do if people don't have questions is just point to people in the room. Now you can put them in the chat, but what I'd like to do is have you ask me about some of your specific needs, things I might be able to help you with, put them in the chat, or you could go up to the host's microphone, walk up to the host's microphone, and then you could just talk to me directly. But you'll have to come up to the host's microphone to do that. So let's just see if we can have some questions, or maybe the host has a question for me. Let's kind of get a little interview going. I did hear the previous presentation, and I think he's listening in on too, from Anthony Keene. And let's just get some conversation started. Okay, somebody asked if I'm speaking.
I have a question.
Okay, good.
Do you have some strategies for helping people deal with change in schedules?
Okay. Well, change can be scary. Now, one thing that helps with change is for it to not be sudden. If there's going to be a change in a schedule, if possible, warn you. Like say, well, tomorrow, okay, let's say it's a van that's coming around to pick you up. The van's going to come at 9 o'clock rather than at 8:30. Okay, now let's just talk about a change in schedule. I was originally told to be on at 10:30 and we were half an hour late. And I got a chance. Sometimes change is not all bad. I got a chance to listen to another interesting presentation that I would not have had a chance to listen to. But it was a change in the schedule. Sometimes there's going to be changes. One of the things I want to try to avoid is sudden surprises. All right, let's say the school's going to have a big construction project. It'd be a good idea to warn the individual with autism and say, well, if you come in tomorrow, there's going to be a hole dug in the parking lot. You know, warn them about that. You know, I mean, I have, you know, but sudden change can be scary. But sometimes things just change. You know, let's look at COVID. I mean, I was traveling 85% of the time, and for a year, all my speaking engagements were canceled. And I had to get onto Zoom quickly. Okay, talking about work with animals. Okay, I can talk about that's in the chat. I started out with horses when I was in high school. I was a terrible high school student. I had to go to special school, and they put me to work running the horse barn, cleaning 9 stalls every day. Also went riding, so I'd spend hours like getting ready for horse shows. Did a lot on, so that was a really big thing. Now the cattle, the way that started is one of the first things I worked on was to look at what cattle were seeing when they went through a chute to get their vaccinations, because sometimes the cattle would refuse to go through the chutes. And I noticed that they might stop at a shadow, some little thing that people don't notice. You see, the thing is, if you're a verbal thinker, you have a tendency to not notice things like shadows. I'm going to show you the kind of stuff cattle get afraid of. Something that you wouldn't notice, the cattle notice, like a coat on a fence, a shiny vehicle parked alongside a facility. These are things that, you know, cattle will notice. Now, the reason I was noticing this is because I was a visual thinker. Now, at the time, when I was in my 20s, I did not know that I thought in pictures. I thought everybody thought in pictures. And it was a shock to me to find out that other people thought verbally. But being a visual thinker helped me work with animals, because animals do not think in words. So being, you know, a visual thinker was helpful. And then I started designing facilities. You know, I started out a freelance business very slowly. And this is where I had a very good mentor in the construction industry to help me get started, help me set up my business. So that's how that got started. But I would not have gotten interested in cattle unless I was exposed to them. I visited my aunt's ranch, and that's how I got exposed to cattle. Because the way interests and careers start is it starts with exposure. I've seen some people on the autism spectrum that are super good photographers, and they don't think to put their work on their phone so they can show it to people. A thing I learned very early on was to always have my portfolio and show it. Now, if you're a good artist, you just put that on your phone. That's how you can sell jobs. That's one of the things I did.
Hello, my name's Tommy Fortuné. I live on the farm. You think change is really good to help people?
Well, it comes then some change is good and some change is bad. I mean, COVID was an example of bad change. There was nothing good about COVID. COVID was horrible.
I know.
And
I-
it turned everybody's life upside down. It was terrible.
yeah.
Now, some change is good, like maybe going to some different places, maybe trying a new hobby. That kind of change would be good.
All right, I'm then thinking, all right, if I want some changes, I want to make it better. How do I make a change, make my life better?
Well, I don't know enough about your life. You see, this is where I'd have to learn more about what your life is now before I could even give any suggestions on how to improve it. Hopefully you've got housing. That would be big number one.
I live in Repton State School.
You live in, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding.
All right, I live in Repton State School.
Oh, okay. So you're at a state school. Okay.
Like I need some, like my guess, I need better freedom, my life. I'm
So
thinking
you'd like more things to be able to do in your life.
my life, yeah.
Like maybe go, if you like art, you go to an art class or
I know.
go to a bingo game or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I work, like I said, I work on horse barn. I like work on horses again and
So you
cows.
like horses?
Yes,
Okay, well, maybe you could do something, volunteer at a therapeutic riding center or maybe something like that.
yeah, I'm thinking about that, yes.
Well, maybe you need to do it. There's a point where you need to stop thinking and do it. And if they
Yeah,
if you can volunteer at a therapeutic riding center, that'd be really good.
yeah. Yeah, I like work on cows too. Baby
Okay.
cows.
Now, I don't know, see, you're in New York,
No, in Massachusetts.
you're in Massachusetts. So if there were any cattle around, it would be on a probably very small farm.
Yeah, I know one of the staff used to work place, have a farm. Paula, her name.
Yeah.
I have checked. She moved now. She lived right near Springfield. I have to check. Find out more information.
Okay.
I might ask her. Can I help her someday?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I say, you did a really good job making this speech, ma'am. You did a very good job.
Okay. Well, see, sometimes just simple things like see, I don't know enough about the place where you're staying at.
Yeah.
But you see, the thing that's different and how I'm approaching advocacy is something specific. Okay, you have to advocate, but
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah.
something specific that you want
Right.
or you need. And I think there needs to be something better to do than play video games or just sit around and watch television or movies.
Yeah.
There needs to be something better than that. And there's a tendency for people to underestimate the ability of people that have a disability. You know, one of the things that I learned to do
Yeah.
was to show people portfolios of work. Like I just showed you this is one of my drawing, you know, this is in my book, Thinking in Pictures. One of my
Oh, I
drawings.
love that.
Yeah, you see, when you look at my drawing.
Yeah, I see that. Wow.
Okay, now I came across socially awkward, but when I showed people my drawings, then they got respect. You know, and there's a lot of autistic people that are very good at photography, and they need to have that.
You did a very good job.
Well, and have that photography on their phone, so you can show it to people, and then you can get hired to do photography
Wow.
by showing off the work. And I've had parents come up to me and say, well, my son or daughter's really good at photography. And I said, do you have any of the pictures on their phone? Well, they hadn't thought to put the pictures on the phone. You see, now today, that's easy to do.
Right.
Oh, here's somebody wrote in the chat that the Whip City Animal
Did it.
Sanctuary is always looking for volunteers. Okay, now this is like having this gathering today. You've had an opportunity to maybe find a place where you could volunteer.
Right.
At the Whip City Animal Sanctuary. That would be really good.
Excuse me, ma'am, we all done?
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Do you have a question? I thought you did. Okay.
We have time for maybe two more questions.
Okay.
I-
I'd be happy to do 2 more questions.
Okay, I have a question for you. What was it? I forgot.
What were you gonna tell? She did a good job with her art.
You go to good art.
Is that what you wanted?
Yeah,
You got advocated.
yeah. That's what I meant. You did a good art, actually. You had a good art, I'm saying.
I'm sorry, I cannot understand the question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think he says you think you have good art.
You know, I think I've done some good drawings and other people have thought I've done some good drawings. You know, somebody else might be good at computer coding. You know, and that's something that you can do, you know, online. There might be, some people are very good at math. I think one problem we have with a lot of people in the disability communities, they don't get exposed to enough stuff to find out if they could do something like computer programming. You know, like JavaScript that runs Minecraft, you know, Python programming, C++. These are some of the common computer programmings. You see, I'm looking at what people can do rather than what they cannot do. Now I'm thinking back to the person in the wheelchair that was very, very good at photography. Well, there's some places he's probably not going to go up a mountain and do photography, but I'm now visualizing that he could do photography in the handicap accessible big convention center at the flower show and make some really good money at it too, because his photographs were gorgeous.
So my question is, how do you help someone that can't self-advocate for themselves when they have a supporter doing it for themselves?
Well, okay, let's start with what you need to self-advocate about. Let's get, one of the problems is we need to start getting much more specific, the specific thing you need. What is the specific thing you need?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So we're running low on time, folks, but we can get a couple minutes.
So the things that I hear all the time is that they can't go out of their house, out of their group home, or they can't join a meeting, or they want to go to an event, or they want to join a board meeting, or they just plain simple want to join something. And it's very difficult for them to advocate for it, and their supporters are telling them they can't do it because they just don't have the transportation or the staff doing it, but they do have the staff to do it.
Well, now, okay, now that's something specific. Okay, now we got to look at transportation where, you know, a vehicle has to take you somewhere versus maybe going on a Zoom call. And those are 2 different things. And let's start with the easy one, like a Zoom call. Of course, they're worried about getting into all kinds of bad stuff online. But, you know, well, let's get very specific. There's certain meetings that you're going to have on Zoom that you should be allowed to go to.
Exactly.
There's a group in Canada that does a movie night thing where there's about 20 people on it. They have a Zoom meeting every week. I've been on that sometimes. I mean, that's the kind of thing you should be allowed to go on. So let's start thinking of what we need to do is let's ask specifically certain meetings you want to be on that we know are not bad things. And you should be able to go on these Zoom calls.
Exactly.
Okay, see how I'm getting much more specific
Yes.
about what I am suggesting. Okay, then the transportation, that gets into money, but the Zoom calls don't. There's no
Yes.
money issue with Zoom calls.
Exactly.
And now I could see the group homes concerned about, pornography and other bad things like that, that the Zoom call would have to be done someplace where staff can say it.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get permission, you can get permission to go on certain Zoom calls, and that should be allowed. And that'd be something I'd probably start the advocacy for that first, because there's no money involved. No, and the staff just get tired and they go, oh, it's just too much trouble. But no, you should be allowed to go on Zoom calls. And then the transportation issue, the transportation issue is a really horrible issue, because that involves money, unfortunately, where the Zoom calls don't. See how I'm breaking the things down? And so I'd start with the Zoom calls, because, and the other thing is finding, things that you could do, what's within walking distance of the group home. You see, I'm a visual thinker, so nothing's abstract with me. I think completely in specific examples.
Exactly. I just had just one more question for you. How can we make the human services services better for us self-advocates? Because I feel like the human services are really failing through the services, because they're not always efficient. Because for example, I had a fight to get self-direction, because it was a real challenging time to get self-direction. Like I had to literally keep advocating at least 10 times just to get self-direction.
Now, when you say self-direction, for what?
To self-direct my own services instead of doing traditional services.
Okay, what is the thing that you wanted? You see, the thing is, things get hung up in bureaucracy.
I wanted to hire my own staff. I wanted to go to the YMCA to get a membership covered through my services through Department of Developmental Services and other stuff, and have say a respite worker. So my question was every time, it's not just me, there's other self-advocates that constantly have to fight a battle with their service coordinator on what we want in our ISP. And they're always giving us the why question. And we give them the explanation, and they're always asking us again with the why question.
Yeah, and that, see, this is something that's a broader issue. And it's a problem with a lot of the service organizations are overworked, they're understaffed. It's a real mess.
Yeah, and they make us feel bad.
It's a total, absolute mess. But they, something like going to the YMCA, you should be allowed to do that.
Exactly. And when I did that, I advocated for a MacBook for my job to have a separate computer. My service coordinator is like, well, you already have a computer. And I'm like, that's my personal computer. That's different. And she was giving me a hard time about it.
Okay, now so you have a computer at work.
So I have a personal computer that I use on my personal use, and I advocated for a separate computer. And I finally got it covered through my services. And every time she's like, well, we covered a MacBook. And I'm like, I get it. I do not need to hear that you covered my computer multiple times. She keeps bringing it up it's oh, we did this and that. And I'm like, I get it. You don't need to keep repeating the same thing over and over. And in my ISP, when I just recently.
Well, the thing is that, you see now, at some jobs that they have a work computer that they don't want you using, for personal stuff. And then
No, that's what I'm saying. I had it through my services covered, and in my ISP, she capitalized it as it was a big thing that she made before she retired, as a thing that she made before she retired. And it was just like, you don't need to like declare that you did something great for me, like you, every, as a conversation.
Well, you see, and you get into the things with the staffing issues on I've read some of the stuff in the airlines where, you know, someone that was maybe, you know, paraplegic, not getting the right, some very specific things the airline, you know, failed to provide to them. And that's definitely something you need to advocate for. Because then with the staff, okay, you might not like the staff, or maybe the staff just don't do their job right. You know, then you get stuff where two people just don't like each other too. That sometimes happens.
Yeah,
But I think the thing that's going to help, I think you also have to ask yourself, because I can think about it, why do you really have to have, if you have a MacBook, that's a nice computer. Why do you have to have two of them?
All right.
I mean,
So-
I'm just thinking, but they things like the YMCA membership, let's say staff members aren't doing stuff right. But again, the thing will just end up that the thing that's probably going to help is being very specific on things that you need, you know, and there are a lot of problems. I'm not glossing over the problems. It's difficult dealing with state agencies.
So unfortunately, folks, we're gonna have to call the end of our time. I'm with
Yeah, but this
Dr.
table was
Grandin,
first.
because we need
They
to
had their
clear the
hand
ballroom,
up
get into
before
our
they-
morning workshops, and give our lovely hotel staff some time to set up lunch. But we want to thank you, Dr. Grandin, so much for the time that you spent with us.
Okay, it was very, very good to be here. And thank you for having me.